In the glamorous banqueting hall where echoes of ambition and power lingered, the billionaire CEO found himself inexplicably drawn to the quiet beauty of his janitor. Her mop bucket scraped against marble worth more than her life, but it was the crumpled blackmail letter in his trash that would change everything, until the billionaire CEO leaned close in a glittering ballroom and whispered 4 words that made her champagne glass tremble: "Marry me for $50 million.
Marry me.
If you truly believe that one can find love even in the most of unusual places, like this video and subscribe to this channel as you're actually in the right lane." Now back to the story. The thing about being invisible was that you saw everything. Priscilla Brian had learned this truth at 17. The night blue and red lights painted her parents' mangled sedan in colors that would haunt her dreams for years. 9 years later, at 26, she'd perfected the art of disappearing. Her navy coveralls were a uniform of erasure. Her shoulders stayed slightly hunched, her eyes perpetually downcast, her movements through Sterling Industries' gleaming corridors as silent as a held breath. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the executive floor was a ghost town of glass and chrome. Priscilla pushed her cleaning cart past conference rooms where billion-dollar deals were struck during daylight hours, where men in Italian suits decided the fates of thousands with the stroke of a pen. Now, in the fluorescent after-hours, it was hers, a kingdom of emptiness and discarded secrets. She'd been scrubbing these floors for 3 years. Long enough to know that Executive VP Harrison left bourbon-stained glasses in his office every Thursday. Long enough to memorize the merger proposals left carelessly on tables, the financial projections crumpled in trash bins, the whispered phone conversations that continued even when she entered a room, because to them, she simply didn't exist. But Priscilla existed more than they knew. While her hands emptied wastebaskets, her mind catalogued everything. Market trends. Acquisition strategies. The nervousness tells of executives about to be fired. Her brain was a steel trap wrapped in latex gloves, and nobody noticed because nobody ever looked down. She was replacing the paper towels in the executive washroom when she saw it, a crumpled printout behind the toilet, as if someone had tried to flush it and failed. Priscilla's practiced hands smoothed out the wrinkles. "I know about the arrangement. 50 million by December 15th, or everyone knows. You have 90 days. The words were printed in a generic font, untraceable. No signature. Just a threat, crude but effective, aimed at someone powerful enough to have $50 million and something worth hiding. Priscilla should have thrown it away. Should have minded her business the way she'd minded it for 3 years, collecting her $32,000 annual salary and her invisibility like armor. But she'd seen the time stamp on the paper, 2:47 p.m., printed last Thursday at a FedEx on 42nd Street. And she'd seen enough crime shows during her lonely nights in her Bronx studio to know that public printers had security cameras. She photographed the letter with her phone, memorized every word, and replaced the trash bag. 3 floors below, in an office that occupied the entire northwest corner of the building, Alexander Sterling stood at his window and watched the city that had made him a king. At 34, he'd built an empire that made grown men nervous and competitors desperate. Forbes called him the Ice King of Wall Street. His enemies called him worse. His friends, if he had any, called him ruthless, brilliant, and completely alone. The latter was by design. Alexander had learned early that connection was weakness. His father had taught him that lesson with fists and contempt, before a heart attack claimed him at 52. His mother had reinforced it by choosing vodka over her son, year after year, until the vodka won. And Vanessa, Vanessa, had driven the point home with surgical precision when she'd married his business rival 3 weeks after accepting Alexander's proposal, taking half his company's secrets as a wedding gift. So Alexander Sterling built walls of ice and lived behind them, warm enough for business, cold enough for everything else. He didn't do romance. Didn't do vulnerability. Didn't do anything that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet or predicted with market analysis. Which made the blackmail letter a problem. Not because of the money, 50 million was irritating but manageable. But because of what it implied: someone new. Someone had gotten close enough to discover the one arrangement Alexander couldn't afford to have exposed. Not now. Not when the merger with Northcrest Industries hung in the balance, worth $3 billion and his entire reputation. He'd thrown the letter away in a moment of rage, then immediately regretted it. But when he'd returned to retrieve it, the trash had already been emptied. By her. The janitor with the downcast eyes and careful movements. He'd noticed her exactly twice in 3 years, once when she'd knocked over a wastebasket and apologized to the floor instead of to him, and once last week when he'd stayed late and she'd slipped past his office like a shadow in navy blue. But she'd been there. In the washroom. Right around the time the letter disappeared. Alexander pulled his phone from his pocket and typed a message to his head of security, find out everything about the night janitor. Name, background, everything. I need it by morning. He hit send and returned to the window, watching the city glitter below him like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere in that city was the person threatening to destroy him. And somewhere in this building was a woman who might be his only way to find them. He just didn't know yet that she'd already found him first. What would you do if you found a blackmail letter worth $50 million? Would you help or walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. The note appeared 2 days later, slipped under the cleaning supply room door like a secret between thieves. Priscilla almost missed it. She'd been running late, the 6 train had stalled between stations for 40 minutes, and she'd rushed through her pre-shift routine of changing into her coveralls and pulling her thick curls into a bun that never quite stayed put. But there it was, a cream-colored envelope, expensive paper stock, no markings except her name written in sharp, masculine handwriting. Priscilla Brian. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, a single sentence. 3rd floor executive lounge. Tonight. 11 p.m. Come alone. No signature. But she knew. Of course she knew. The executive lounge was a room Priscilla cleaned every Wednesday, all leather chairs the color of money and abstract art worth more than her yearly salary. At 11 p.m., it sat empty and dark except for the city light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Priscilla arrived at 10:58, her heart a drum against her ribs. Alexander Sterling was already there. He stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, hands in his pockets. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost what she made in 6 months, tailored so precisely it looked like armor. For a long moment, he didn't turn around, and Priscilla wondered if this was some kind of power play, making her wait, making her nervous, establishing dominance before the first word was spoken. Then he spoke, his voice low and measured, each word carefully weighted. You left me a note. It wasn't a question. Priscilla's throat went dry. She'd slipped the anonymous tip under his office door 3 nights ago, after 2 days of internal debate. The sender used a public printer at the FedEx on 42nd Street. Security cameras. Time stamp on your copy, 2:47 p.m. last Thursday. You're welcome. I did, she said, and hated how small her voice sounded in the vast room. Why? She hadn't expected that question. Hadn't prepared for it. Because someone's trying to hurt you. And I don't like bullies. Alexander turned then, and Priscilla felt the full weight of his attention for the first time in 3 years. His eyes were storm gray, intelligent and cold, assessing her the way a jeweler might examine a diamond, looking for flaws, calculating value, determining authenticity. You read the letter, he said. I did. And you're smart enough to know that makes you a liability. It wasn't a threat. Just a statement of fact, delivered in the same tone he might use to discuss quarterly earnings. But Priscilla felt the danger in it anyway, the implication hanging in the air between them like smoke. I'm also smart enough to help you find them, she said, lifting her chin. If you want. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or calculation. He took 3 steps toward her, close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the single silver thread in his dark hair, the exhaustion he wore like a second skin beneath all that expensive grooming. "What's your name?" he asked. "You know my name. It was on the envelope. I want to hear you say it." "Priscilla Brian." "How old are you, Priscilla Brian?" 26. "And can you keep a secret?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Priscilla thought about the secrets she already kept, the merger deals she'd memorized, the affairs she'd witnessed, the firings she'd predicted. She thought about her own secrets, the ones she carried like stones in her pockets, her parents' death, the vultures who'd taken everything, the lonely nights when she studied financial reports by lamplight in her studio apartment because knowledge was the only currency she had left. "Yes," she said simply. Alexander studied her for another long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, tapped something, and turned the screen toward her. It was a background check, her background check. Every detail of her life laid bare, her parents' accident, her high school diploma, her 3 years at Sterling Industries, her spotless record, her $600 a month studio in the Bronx. He'd investigated her. Of course he had. "You're either very brave or very foolish," he said, pocketing his phone. "I haven't decided which. Does it matter?" "It might." He turned back to the window, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, not softer, exactly, but less guarded. "The person blackmailing me knows something that could destroy a $3 billion merger. If that information goes public, it won't just hurt me. It'll hurt 3,000 employees who'll lose their jobs when Northcrest walks away." Priscilla processed this. "So the 50 million isn't about you. It's about them. Everything's about them. That's what being a CEO means." He paused. "I need to find whoever sent that letter before December 15th. And I need to do it quietly, without alerting my security team or my board or anyone who might leak it." "Why tell me this?" Alexander turned to face her fully, and for the first time, she saw something almost like respect in those cold gray eyes. "Because in 3 years, you've been invisible in this building. You've cleaned my office, emptied my trash, overheard my calls, and you've never once leaked anything, sold anything, or caused any problems. That kind of discretion is rare. Valuable." He took another step closer. "And because you noticed a detail my entire security team missed. The printer. The timestamp. The cameras." Priscilla's pulse quickened. "You want me to help you? I want to hire you. Not as a janitor. As a consultant. You'll have access to everything you need, security footage, employee records, financial data. You'll report only to me. And when this is over, you'll be compensated appropriately." It was insane. Impossible. A billionaire CEO asking a janitor to solve his blackmail case like something out of a movie. But Priscilla had learned long ago that life didn't follow scripts. Sometimes it threw you curveballs. Sometimes drunk drivers killed your parents. Sometimes your only chance at something better came wrapped in the strangest packages. "How much?" she asked. 20,000. Cash. Regardless of outcome. 20,000. More than half her annual salary, for what might be a few weeks of work. 50, Priscilla countered, surprising herself. Alexander's eyebrow rose. "You're negotiating. You said discretion is valuable. So is my risk. If this goes wrong, I lose my job and possibly worse. 50,000, and I'll find your blackmailer." For a moment, she thought she'd overplayed her hand. Then Alexander Sterling smiled, a real smile, sharp and brief as lightning, and extended his hand. "Deal." "But Priscilla." His grip was warm and firm when she shook his hand. "If you double-cross me, I will destroy you. Understand?" "Understood." "Good." He released her hand and headed for the door, then paused. "One more thing. This arrangement stays between us. You tell no one. Trust no one. Not your friends, your family, nobody." Priscilla almost laughed. Friends? Family? She'd been alone since she was 17. That won't be a problem, she said. Alexander nodded and left, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. Priscilla stood alone in the executive lounge, staring at her reflection in the dark windows, and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed her own death warrant. Maybe both. The next morning, Priscilla walked into Sterling Industries through the front doors instead of the service entrance. It felt wrong. Like wearing someone else's skin. The security guard, Ramon, who usually waved her through with barely a glance, did a double take. She traded her coveralls for a simple black blazer and gray slacks from Target, pulled her hair into a professional bun, and wore the only pair of heels she owned. They pinched her toes, but she walked like they didn't. "I have a meeting with Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Ramon checked his computer, frowned, then nodded. 34th floor. His assistant will meet you. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another dimension. Priscilla had cleaned these elevators 100 times, scrubbed the mirrors until they gleamed. Now she stood in one during business hours, surrounded by executives who didn't see her any more now than they had when she'd been invisible. Except one. Harrison Webb, Executive VP of Operations, stepped in on the 23rd floor. He was 50-something, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from weekend golf and winter vacations in the Bahamas. Priscilla recognized him immediately. She'd emptied his bourbon-stained glasses every Thursday for 3 years. He glanced at her, and she saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. Confusion. Suspicion. "Don't I know you?" he asked. "I don't think so," Priscilla said smoothly. "First day." He studied her face for another moment, then his phone buzzed and his attention shifted. "Welcome aboard." The elevator doors opened on 34, and Priscilla stepped into a world of glass walls and hushed efficiency. Alexander's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Vivian Chen, greeted her with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Brian. Mr. Sterling is expecting you." She handed Priscilla a tablet and a security badge. "You'll be working in the research department. Cover story is you're a freelance analyst consulting on the Northcrest merger. Your badge gives you access to floors 20 through 34, plus the archives." Priscilla took the badge. Her photo was already on it. He'd moved fast. "Any questions?" Vivian asked. "About 1,000. But Priscilla just shook her head. "Good. He wants results, not excuses." Vivian's smile sharpened. "And Ms. Brian? Whatever this arrangement is, don't get comfortable. Consultants come and go around here. The warning was clear, you're temporary. Disposable. Don't forget it." Alexander's office was exactly as she remembered it from her cleaning shifts, minimalist, efficient, dominated by windows that framed Manhattan like a trophy. But seeing it in daylight, with him behind the desk in shirt sleeves and reading glasses, felt different. More real. More dangerous. "Problem already?" he asked without looking up from his computer. Harrison Webb recognized me. In the elevator. Now Alexander looked up, his expression unreadable. "What did you tell him?" "That was my first day." He seemed to accept it. "Harrison drinks too much and notices too little. He won't be an issue." Alexander removed his glasses and stood. "But others might be. You need to be careful. People here are sharks. They smell blood, they circle. I've been invisible to these people for 3 years. They won't see me now either." "That's where you're wrong." He came around the desk, and Priscilla fought the urge to step back. "You were invisible because you were supposed to be. Now you're somewhere you shouldn't be, and that makes you interesting. Suspicious." He was right, and she hated it. "Then what do you want me to do?" "Your job." Find the blackmailer. He pulled a file from his desk drawer, thick, marked confidential. This is everything my security team gathered on the letter. Forensics came back clean. No prints, no DNA, paper stock sold at 1,000 locations nationwide. The FedEx location you identified? I had them pull the footage. Camera was conveniently broken that day. Priscilla took the file. Convenient. Too convenient. Whoever this is, they know what they're doing. Alexander leaned against his desk, arms crossed. The letter mentioned an arrangement. Only 4 people in this company know about it, me, my CFO, my lawyer, and my head of security. What arrangement? That's not your concern. It is if I'm supposed to find who's threatening to expose it. Alexander's jaw tightened. For a moment, Priscilla thought he might throw her out, tell her the deal was off. Instead, he moved to the window, his back to her. I have a daughter, he said quietly. Victoria. She's 7 years old, and she doesn't know I exist. The words hung in the air like a confession. Priscilla waited. Her mother and I were together briefly, years ago. When she got pregnant, she didn't want me involved. Said I'd be a terrible father, and she was probably right. But I set up a trust fund. Made sure Victoria would never want for anything. The arrangement is that I stay away, and in exchange, her mother keeps quiet about Victoria's existence. Why? Because my father was a drunk and an abuser, and his father before him. Victoria deserves better than that legacy. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Priscilla heard the pain beneath it. If the board finds out I have a child I've abandoned, it'll destroy the merger. Northcrest won't do business with a man who can't even take care of his own daughter. Priscilla processed this. A hidden child. A secret arrangement. $50 million. Someone close to you knows, she said. Someone in that circle of 4. Yes. And you want me to figure out which one wants to destroy you. Alexander turned, and his eyes were cold again. I want you to find them before they do. You have 47 days until December 15th. The clock is ticking, Priscilla. She looked down at the file in her hands, at the weight of secrets and lies and betrayal it represented. She should walk away. Should take her coveralls and her invisibility and her simple, safe life back. But $50,000 could change everything. Could give her a future instead of just survival. I'll find them, she said. Alexander nodded. I know you will. But as Priscilla left his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into quicksand, and the only way out was to sink deeper. 3 days into her investigation, Priscilla discovered 2 things. First, that Alexander Sterling's inner circle was built on suspicion and paranoia, and second, that someone was watching her. She felt it in the archives, a prickling at the back of her neck as she reviewed security logs. She noticed it in the hallways, conversations that stopped when she approached, eyes that followed her movements. Someone knew she was digging, and they didn't like it. On Thursday evening, as she was leaving through the parking garage, a black sedan pulled up beside her. The rear window lowered, and Alexander's voice cut through the darkness. Get in. Priscilla hesitated. Why? Because someone just tried to access your apartment building's security system. Get in. Now. Her blood went cold. She slid into the car. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Alexander sat in the back, his laptop open, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word. What do you mean, tried to access? Priscilla demanded. My IT team monitors threats in real time. 20 minutes ago, someone attempted to hack your building's camera system. They wanted to know your movements, your schedule. He turned the laptop toward her. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, meaningless to her, but clearly significant to him. They were good. Professional. But not good enough. Who? I don't know yet. But they know you're investigating, which means someone inside talked. His jaw tightened. Harrison Webb requested your personnel file this afternoon. Said he wanted to verify your credentials. I denied the request, but it confirms my suspicion, you're making people nervous. The car turned onto the FDR Drive, heading north. Manhattan's lights blurred past the window. Where are we going? Priscilla asked. Somewhere safe. Until we figure out who's behind this, you're staying at one of my properties. He closed the laptop. Pack a bag. You'll be there until this is resolved. You can't just. I can, and I am. His voice was steel. Someone is escalating, Priscilla. That means you're either getting close to something, or they're trying to scare you off. Either way, I'm not taking chances. The property turned out to be a penthouse in Tribeca, 3,000 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and a view that made Priscilla's studio apartment look like a closet. Alexander's driver brought up her hastily packed duffel bag while Alexander moved through the space with the ease of ownership, turning on lights, adjusting the thermostat. Guest room is down the hall. Kitchen is fully stocked. Security code for the elevator is 7-4-3-8. Don't open the door for anyone. He paused. I'll be working from here for the next few days. Easier to coordinate. Priscilla stared at him. You're staying here? With me? It's a 3-bedroom penthouse. I think we'll manage not to kill each other. Something almost like humor flickered in his eyes. Besides, if someone's targeting you, they're targeting me by extension. Better we're in the same location. He was right, but the thought of sharing a space with Alexander Sterling, of seeing him without the armor of his office, his tailored suits, his carefully maintained distance, felt intimate in a way that made her nervous. I can take care of myself, she said. I don't doubt that. But you're no good to me dead. He shrugged off his suit jacket and loosened his tie. There's a laptop in the study. Encrypted. Use it for your research. I've granted you access to every file in the company, financial records, emails, personnel histories. If the answer is there, find it. He started toward the master bedroom, then stopped. Priscilla. Thank you. For not running. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This man who Forbes called the Ice King, who built empires and crushed competitors, was thanking her for staying. You're paying me $50,000, she said lightly. That buys a lot of courage. No. Money buys compliance. Courage is free. He studied her face. You're doing this because you want to. Because you're curious. Because you don't like bullies. He repeated her own words from their first meeting back to her. That's rare. Before she could respond, he disappeared into his room, leaving Priscilla alone in a penthouse that cost more per month than she'd earned in her entire life. At 2 a.m., unable to sleep, Priscilla found Alexander in the study, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. He'd changed into a t-shirt and jeans, the first time she'd seen him in anything casual, and his hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. Can't sleep either, he asked without looking up. Too much adrenaline. She sat in the chair across from him. I've been going through the security footage from the FedEx. I think I found something. Now he looked up, alert. Show me. Priscilla pulled up the file on her phone. The camera was broken the day your letter was printed, conveniently. But I checked the week before. Same time, same printer, there's a figure. Blurry, but visible. They were testing the equipment, making sure it worked before they broke the camera for the real thing. Alexander leaned forward, squinting at the screen. The image was grainy, but a shape was visible, average height, wearing a baseball cap and dark clothes. Can you enhance it? Already sent it to a friend who does freelance digital work. She owes me a favor. Priscilla zoomed in on the figure's hand. Look at the left wrist. That's a watch. Expensive one, from the glint. How many people in your inner circle wear expensive watches? All of them. Exactly. But look closer. She zoomed in further. The image pixelated but revealed a distinctive band, braided leather, unusual. That's custom work. Handmade. I saw one just like it on someone's wrist this week. Alexander's eyes sharpened. Who? Your head of security. James Montague. The silence that followed was deafening. Montague has been with me for 8 years, Alexander said finally. He's vetted, loyal, trustworthy. He's also the only person besides you, your CFO, and your lawyer who knows about Victoria. Priscilla met his gaze. And he has the skills to hack security systems, break cameras, and cover his tracks. Alexander stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city sprawled below them, oblivious to the betrayal unfolding in this room. If it's Montague. He didn't finish the sentence. Then we need proof, Priscilla said. Real proof. Not just a blurry image of a watch. Alexander turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw something she'd never expected, fear. Not for himself, but for what this meant. If my head of security is blackmailing me, then nothing in my company is safe. No file, no conversation, no secret. His voice was quiet. Including you. The weight of that settled between them, two people trapped in a penthouse, hunting a predator who knew every move they made. Then we'd better work fast, Priscilla said. Alexander nodded slowly. Then, surprising her, he held out his hand. Partners? Priscilla took it. His grip was firm, warm, and for the first time since this began, she didn't feel alone. Partners. The photograph was hidden in a locked drawer in Alexander's study, not hidden well, but hidden enough that Priscilla knew she shouldn't be looking at it. But it was 4 a.m., Alexander was asleep, and the drawer had been slightly open. The photo showed a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark curls and storm-gray eyes. She was laughing, holding an ice cream cone, completely unaware of the camera. Written on the back in faded ink, Victoria, Central Park, last summer. I hired a private investigator to take that. Priscilla spun around. Alexander stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt that made him look younger, more human. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's fine. He crossed to the desk and took the photo from her hands, staring at it like it was both treasure and torture. I get 1 photo a year. That's the arrangement. 1 photo, proof she's healthy and happy, and I stay away. That must be unbearable. It is. He set the photo down carefully. Her mother, Isabel, she was right to keep me away. I'm my father's son, Priscilla. I have his temper, his coldness, his inability to connect. Victoria deserves better than that. You don't know that you'd be like him. Yes, I do. Alexander's voice was flat. When I was 12, my father got drunk and put my mother in the hospital. I watched him do it. I watched, and I did nothing, because I was scared and small and powerless. And you know what the worst part is? Sometimes, when I'm angry, I feel that same rage in me. That same violence. And I think, what if I'm just like him? The confession hung in the air, raw and honest. Priscilla thought about her own rage, the fury she'd felt at 17 when drunk driver walked away from the accident with a slap on the wrist while her parents went to the morgue. The anger that still burned in her chest some nights, hot and poisonous. I was 17 when my parents died, she said quietly. Drunk driver. He got 6 months in jail and 5 years probation. They got coffins. She moved to stand beside him. For years, I fantasized about finding him. Hurting him the way he hurt me. That rage was eating me alive. What changed? I realized that rage was giving him power over me. He'd already taken my parents, I wouldn't let him take my future too. She looked at the photo of Victoria. You're not your father, Alexander. Because you're scared of becoming him. Your father never had that fear. That makes all the difference. Alexander turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw something crack open, some wall he'd built long ago, now showing its first fracture. You're wasted as a janitor, he said softly. I was never just a janitor. I was invisible. She smiled. Big difference. For a moment, they stood there in the pre-dawn silence, two damaged people who'd learned to survive by building walls. Then Alexander's phone buzzed, a harsh intrusion that shattered the moment. He checked it, and his expression darkened. Montague just accessed Victoria's file. 3 minutes ago. Priscilla's blood went cold. He's going after her. No. He's reminding me what's at stake. Alexander's jaw tightened. The file contains Isabel's address, Victoria's school, her schedule. Everything someone would need to, he didn't finish. We need to move faster. We need proof. Alexander pulled up his laptop. I've been monitoring Montague's communications. He's careful, but he made a call yesterday from his personal cell. 47 seconds to an unlisted number in the Cayman Islands. That's where you hide money you don't want traced. Can you track the number? Already did. It's registered to a shell company. But the company has a physical address, a law firm in Georgetown. He pulled up the information. I'm flying there tomorrow. I need documentation, proof that Montague is moving money offshore, preparing to run once he gets his 50 million. I'm coming with you. No. It's too dangerous. You need someone who can think like a criminal. Priscilla crossed her arms. I've spent 3 years watching rich people hide things. I know how they operate. You need me. Alexander studied her for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Fine. But we do this my way. We go in, we get what we need, and we get out. No heroics. Agreed. They worked through the morning, planning every detail. Flight times. Cover stories. What documents they'd need. By the time the sun rose over Manhattan, they had a plan. But as Priscilla made coffee in Alexander's designer kitchen, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Montague was too smart to make obvious mistakes. The phone call, the file access, it felt deliberate. Like he wanted them to find it. Alexander, she called out. He appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a suit, back to being the Ice King of Wall Street. What if this is a trap, she said. What if he's setting us up? Alexander's expression was grim. Then we walk into it with our eyes open. He checked his watch. Car leaves in an hour. Pack light. And Priscilla? If things go wrong down there, you run. You hear me? You take the 50,000 I've already deposited in your account and you disappear. That wasn't the deal. I'm making it the deal. Victoria's already lost one parent. I won't let her lose the chance at knowing the other because I got you killed. Before Priscilla could argue, his phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. When? Pause. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Priscilla, and she saw real fear in his eyes for the first time. Isabel just called. Someone sent Victoria a gift at school. A music box with a note inside, Daddy loves you. Time to meet. She's terrified. The blackmail had just become a threat. And the clock was ticking louder than ever. If you were Priscilla, would you risk everything to help Alexander save his daughter? Or would you walk away while you still could? Tell us in the comments. The private jet felt surreal, leather seats that cost more than cars, a flight attendant who appeared and disappeared like a ghost, and Alexander Sterling sitting across from her, staring out the window at clouds that looked close enough to touch. They'd left New York within 3 hours of the music box incident. Isabel had taken Victoria out of school and gone to a safe house Alexander kept for emergencies. The music box sat in an evidence bag in Alexander's briefcase, white porcelain, delicate, with a ballerina that spun to a haunting melody. The note inside had been simple: "Daddy loves you. Time to meet." "She asked about me," Alexander said suddenly, his voice barely audible over the engine hum. "Victoria." Isabel said she asked if her daddy was coming to protect her. Priscilla's chest tightened. What did Isabel tell her? That her daddy was doing everything he could. He finally looked at Priscilla, and his eyes were raw. "She's 7 years old and some monster is using her to get to me. What kind of father lets that happen? The kind who's trying to protect her from something worse." Priscilla unbuckled her seatbelt and moved to sit beside him. Montague is cornered. Cornered animals are dangerous, but they're also desperate. Desperate means mistakes. I don't want him to make mistakes with my daughter's life. He won't. Because we're going to end this today. She pulled out her laptop. "I've been tracking the shell company. It's called Meridian Holdings. Registered in 2019, right around the time you started negotiations with Northcrest." Alexander's eyes sharpened. Montague was planning this for years. Or someone was planning it for him. Priscilla pulled up a document. Meridian Holdings has a parent company. Guess who sits on the board? Who? Harrison Webb. The name landed like a bomb. Webb. Alexander leaned forward, studying the screen. Webb is an alcoholic middle manager. He doesn't have the intelligence or the nerve to pull this off. Maybe not alone. But what if Montague recruited him? Webb has access to financial records, board meetings, sensitive information. And he recognized me in the elevator. He knew something was off. Priscilla's mind raced. What if they're working together? Montague provides the muscle and technical skills, Webb provides inside information, they split the $50 million. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Vivian. I need you to pull all of Harrison Webb's financial records for the past 3 years. Banking, investments, everything. Pause. I don't care if it's legal. Get it done. I'll be back in New York by tonight." He hung up. "You think she'll find something?" Priscilla asked. "If there's something to find, Vivian will find it. She's been my assistant for 6 years. If I trust anyone in that building, it's her." He looked at Priscilla. "Present company excluded." Something warm flickered in Priscilla's chest. Trust. From a man who trusted no one. "Why did you really hire me?" she asked. "It wasn't just because I found the printer location." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "Then, because you reminded me of myself. Before I became this." He gestured at the private jet, the expensive watch, the empire. "You're hungry. Smart. Underestimated. I looked at you in that executive lounge and I saw who I used to be, someone fighting for survival with nothing but their wits. And now I see someone who could be so much more than survival. If someone gave them a chance." He met her eyes. "When this is over, I want you to stay at Sterling Industries. Not as a consultant. As an analyst. Real position, real salary, real future." Priscilla's breath caught. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who kiss my ass and stab my back. I need people who see patterns. Who ask questions. Who aren't afraid to negotiate $50,000 when I offer 20. A ghost of a smile. I need people like you." The jet hit turbulence, and Priscilla reached out instinctively. Her hand landed on Alexander's, and for a moment, neither of them moved. His hand was warm. Solid. Real. I've been invisible my whole life, Priscilla said softly. Even before my parents died. I was the girl who sat in the back of the class, who blended into crowds, who nobody remembered. And I told myself that was strength. That invisibility was power. She looked at their joined hands. But maybe I was just scared of being seen. I see you, Alexander said. I've seen you since the moment you left that note under my door. Maybe even before that. The air between them shifted, charged, electric, dangerous in a completely different way. Priscilla pulled her hand back, suddenly aware of boundaries she shouldn't cross. He was her employer. This was business. Nothing more. But the way Alexander looked at her suggested he was thinking the same dangerous thoughts. We should prepare for landing, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Right. He cleared his throat and returned to his side of the plane. Georgetown in 20 minutes. Let's end this. But as Priscilla buckled her seatbelt and watched the Caribbean appear below them, turquoise and beautiful and hiding secrets in its depths, she wondered if ending the blackmail would also mean ending whatever was building between them. And she wasn't sure which scared her more. The law firm in Georgetown was a whitewashed building with palm trees swaying in the breeze, beautiful, pristine, and completely empty. This doesn't feel right, Priscilla said as they stood in the abandoned reception area. Papers scattered across desks, computers still running, but not a soul in sight. Alexander moved through the space like a predator, checking offices, opening filing cabinets. Someone cleared out. Recently. Then Priscilla saw it, an envelope on the receptionist's desk with Alexander's name written in familiar handwriting. Her blood went cold. Alexander opened it and pulled out a single photograph. Victoria, walking out of school, holding Isabel's hand. Taken yesterday. On the back, written in marker, "Tick-tock, Daddy." He knew we were coming, Alexander said, his voice deadly calm. He knew exactly what we'd do. Priscilla's mind raced. The phone call, the file access, the shell company, all of it breadcrumbs. He wanted us out of New York. Alexander's phone rang. He answered, and Priscilla watched his face drain of color. What? His voice cracked. When? He hung up, and when he looked at Priscilla, she saw devastation. Someone broke into the safe house. 40 minutes ago. Isabel and Victoria are gone. The world tilted. They can't be. My security team found the door kicked in, Isabel's phone smashed on the floor, and Victoria's stuffed rabbit torn apart. Alexander's hands were shaking. He took them. While we were chasing ghosts in the Caribbean, Montague took my daughter. Priscilla reached for him, but he jerked away. This is my fault. I should have kept them closer. I should have. Alexander, this isn't. You don't understand. He whirled on her, and the rage in his eyes was terrifying. I hired you to help me, and all you've done is lead us into traps. First the security breach, then this wild goose chase to Georgetown, and now my daughter is gone because I was too busy trusting some janitor who. He stopped, but the damage was done. Some janitor. The words hung in the air like poison. Priscilla felt something inside her chest crack open, the same wound that had formed when she was 17 and the world had shown her exactly how little she mattered. When lawyers had taken everything and left her with nothing. When she'd learned that to people with power, she was disposable. Some janitor, she repeated, her voice flat. That's what I am to you. Priscilla, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. She stepped back, creating distance. When things were going well, I was a partner. I was someone you saw. But the moment it goes wrong, I'm back to being the help. The invisible girl who should have stayed in her place. That's not fair. Fair. Priscilla's voice rose. You brought me into this. You offered me $50,000 to solve your problem, and I've been doing everything I can, and now you're blaming me because the man you hired, the man you trusted for 8 years, turned out to be a monster. Alexander's jaw tightened. If you hadn't pushed to come here. Then what? You'd have figured it out yourself. You'd have saved Victoria. Priscilla grabbed her bag. You want to know the truth? You're so busy being terrified of becoming your father that you can't see you already are him. Blaming everyone else when things go wrong. Lashing out at people who care about you. Pushing away anyone who gets too close. The words hit like physical blows. Alexander's face went white. Get out, he said quietly. What? Get out. His voice was ice. You're fired. The deal's off. Go back to New York, take your money, and get out of my life. Alexander. Now. The word echoed in the empty building. Priscilla stared at him, this man she'd started to see beyond the ice, beyond the walls. This man who'd held her hand on a plane and offered her a future. And now he was throwing her away like trash, just like everyone else in her life had done. You're right about one thing, she said, her voice shaking. You are your father's son. Because he destroyed everyone who tried to love him, and you're doing the same thing. She turned and walked out into the Caribbean sun, leaving Alexander Sterling alone with his rage and his fear and the daughter he might never see again. Behind her, she heard the sound of something shattering, glass, maybe, or a heart finally breaking. She didn't look back. On the flight back to New York, coached this time, using her own money, Priscilla's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You want to save the girl? Come alone to Pier 17. Midnight. Tell Sterling and she dies. You have one chance to be the hero, Priscilla. Don't waste it. Her hands trembled as she stared at the message. She should tell Alexander. Should call the police. Should do anything except what the text was asking. But Victoria was 7 years old and terrified, and Priscilla knew what it felt like to lose everything. She typed back, I'll be there. Pier 17 at midnight was a graveyard of shipping containers and shadows. Priscilla stood alone at the entrance, her phone clutched in one hand, a canister of pepper spray in the other, purchased at a bodega on her way here. It was a pathetic weapon against whoever had taken Victoria, but it was all she had. She should have called Alexander. Should have told someone where she was going. But his words still burned in her chest, some janitor. Let him think she'd run away. Let him think she'd taken the money and disappeared. Maybe that's what she should have done, saved herself instead of walking into a trap for a man who'd thrown her away the moment things got hard. But Victoria's face haunted her. Those storm-gray eyes so much like her father's. That little girl who'd asked if her daddy was coming to protect her. Someone had to protect her. Even if that someone was just a janitor. You came. Priscilla spun around. A figure emerged from behind a shipping container, but it wasn't Montague. It was Vivian Chen. Alexander's assistant. The woman with the sharp eyes and sharper smile. The one person Alexander said he trusted. Vivian. Priscilla's mind raced, recalculating everything. Where's Montague? Montague? Vivian laughed, cold and bitter. James Montague is in his apartment right now, probably drinking scotch and watching Netflix. He has no idea any of this is happening. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The watch. The security breaches. The shell company. Priscilla's voice was barely a whisper. It was you. All of it. Very good. Vivian clapped slowly, mockingly. See, this is why Alexander should have promoted me years ago instead of making me his glorified secretary. I'm the one who runs his entire life. I schedule his meetings, manage his files, know every secret he has. But do I get credit? Do I get equity? No. I get a salary and a pat on the head while boys like Harrison Webb get VP titles they don't deserve. So you framed Montague and Webb. I borrowed Montague's watch, made sure the cameras caught it. I set up the shell company with Webb's name attached. He's too drunk to notice his identity being used. And I planted just enough evidence to lead Alexander exactly where I wanted him. Vivian's smile was sharp. While he was chasing ghosts in Georgetown, I had plenty of time to handle loose ends. Where's Victoria? Safe. For now. Vivian pulled out her phone and showed Priscilla a photo. Victoria and Isabel, tied up but alive, in what looked like a warehouse. I'm not a monster. I don't want to hurt a child. I just want what I've earned. $50 million isn't earning, it's stealing. Is it? I've given Alexander 6 years of my life. 6 years of 80-hour weeks, of canceled plans, of being invisible while he built his empire on my back. 50 million is less than 1% of what he's worth. Vivian's voice hardened. Consider it severance pay. Priscilla's mind worked frantically. Vivian was smart, methodical, and clearly desperate. But she'd made one mistake, she'd underestimated the janitor. You're not going to get away with this, Priscilla said. Oh, but I am. Because you're going to help me. Vivian pulled out a gun, small, silver, deadly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Alexander and tell him that if he wants his daughter back, he needs to wire 50 million to my account. If he calls the police, Victoria dies. If he tries to trace the money, Victoria dies. If he does anything except exactly what I say, Victoria dies. And if I refuse? Then I shoot you right here, dump your body in the river, and Victoria dies anyway. Your choice, Priscilla. Be the hero or be a corpse. Priscilla's finger hovered over Alexander's number. She could call him. Tell him everything. Let him handle this with his resources and his security team and his money. But she remembered his face in Georgetown. His rage. His pain. His fear. And she remembered something else, patterns. Vivian was following a pattern, the same pattern every blackmailer followed. Escalation. Desperation. The final demand. But patterns could be broken. I'll make the call, Priscilla said slowly. But I want to see Victoria first. Proof of life. You don't make demands. Yes, I do. Because if she's already dead, there's no reason for me to cooperate. And you need me, Vivian. You need someone Alexander trusts to make this call, or he'll never believe it. Priscilla met her eyes. So show me Victoria. Now. For a long moment, Vivian stared at her. Then she nodded. Fine. But if you try anything, I shoot you both. Understand? Understood. Vivian led her deeper into the pier, toward a warehouse at the far end. As they walked, Priscilla's hand slipped into her pocket and sent a text message, just 3 words, but maybe enough. Pier 17. Vivian. Hurry. She hit send to Alexander's number and prayed he'd forgive her enough to read it. Behind them, in the distance, she heard the sound of cars approaching. Either rescue was coming, or this was about to get much worse. The warehouse smelled like rust and seawater. Victoria sat in a corner, her small body curled against Isabel's, both of them bound with zip ties but unharmed. When Victoria saw Priscilla, her eyes went wide. Are you here to save us? The little girl whispered, her voice trembling. Priscilla's heart shattered. Yes, sweetheart. I promise. How touching. Vivian kept the gun trained on Priscilla. Now make the call. Tell Alexander. The warehouse door exploded inward. Alexander Sterling walked through like an avenging angel, flanked by 4 armed security guards. His eyes locked onto Vivian, cold and lethal. Put the gun down, Vivian. Stay back. Vivian swung the gun toward Victoria. I'll shoot her, I swear to God. No, you won't. Priscilla stepped between the gun and the little girl. Because you're not a monster. You said so yourself. You're just tired of being invisible. Vivian's hand trembled. You don't understand what it's like. Being the one who holds everything together while someone else takes all the credit. Being essential and ignored at the same time. You're right. I don't understand. Priscilla took a careful step forward. Because I've only been invisible for 9 years. You've been invisible for 6. And I know exactly how much that hurts. Tears streamed down Vivian's face. He never even saw me. 6 years, and he never once asked about my life, my dreams, what I wanted. I was just the assistant. Just the janitor, Priscilla finished softly. I know, Vivian. I know. Then you know why I had to do this. I know why you thought you had to. But taking Victoria? That's not justice. That's just hurting another invisible person, a little girl who never did anything to you. Vivian's resolve wavered. The gun lowered slightly. Vivian. Alexander's voice was different now, not cold, but human. You're right. I didn't see you. I treated you like a tool instead of a person, and that was wrong. But this? He gestured at Victoria. This makes you the same as everyone who made you feel invisible. Don't become what you hate. For a long moment, the only sound was Victoria's quiet crying. Then Vivian lowered the gun completely and dropped it to the floor. She sank to her knees, sobbing. I just wanted to matter. Security moved in, gently restraining her. As they led her away, Vivian looked at Priscilla one last time. You got out, she whispered. You stopped being invisible. How? Priscilla glanced at Alexander, then back at Vivian. Someone saw me. And I let them. Hours later, after police statements and medical checks and tearful reunions, Priscilla found herself alone in Alexander's penthouse. Dawn painted Manhattan gold and pink, and she was packing her duffel bag when she heard the door open. Alexander stood there, still in his clothes from the pier, exhaustion written across his face. You texted me, he said quietly. Even after what I said in Georgetown, you texted me. Victoria needed her father. She needed you too. You saved her life, Priscilla. You walked into a trap alone because, his voice broke. Why did you do that? Because I know what it's like to lose everything. And I couldn't let Victoria go through that. She zipped her bag. The $50,000 is in my account. Thank you for that. I'll leave the key card on the counter. Where will you go? I don't know. Somewhere I can be visible, maybe. Alexander crossed the room in 3 strides and caught her hand. Stay. Alexander. I'm not asking as your employer. I'm asking as someone who was terrified he'd never see you again. He pulled her closer. In Georgetown, I said things I didn't mean. I was scared and I lashed out, and I hurt you. I became exactly what you said, my father's son. And I'm sorry. God, Priscilla, I'm so sorry. Tears burned her eyes. You called me some janitor. You were never just a janitor. You were the woman who saw patterns no one else saw. Who risked everything for my daughter. Who called me out when I needed it. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Who made me want to be better than the man I was raised to be. Alexander. Marry me. The world stopped. What? Not for $50 million. Not for a merger or a deal or anything practical. He cupped her face in his hands. Marry me because I see you, Priscilla Brian. Because you see me. Because we're both tired of being invisible and maybe together we can be extraordinary. Priscilla's breath caught. That's insane. Probably. He smiled, a real smile, warm and vulnerable. But you negotiated my original offer to more than double. So negotiate this. What do you want? She thought about it. About invisibility and visibility. About janitors and billionaires. About two damaged people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. I want time, she said. I want us to do this right. Dating. Dinners. Getting to know each other without blackmail and danger. Anne. He kissed her. It was soft and desperate and tasted like new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria's voice came from the doorway. Is she my new mommy? Alexander and Priscilla turned to find Victoria standing there, holding Isabel's hand, her eyes full of hope. Not yet, sweetheart, Priscilla said, kneeling down to Victoria's level. But maybe someday. If that's okay with you. Victoria launched herself into Priscilla's arms. It's very okay. And in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage and the healing and the impossible possibility of it all, Priscilla realized she was finally, truly visible. Not as a janitor. Not as a consultant. Not as anyone's secret or shame. Just like herself. And that was enough. 6 months later, Priscilla walked into Sterling Industries through the front door, not as a janitor, not as a consultant, but as the company's new director of strategic analysis. Her office was on the 34th floor, right next to Alexander's. And on her left hand, catching the morning light, was an engagement ring that had nothing to do with $50 million and everything to do with love. Some stories don't start with a fairy tale. Some start with mop buckets and blackmail letters and two people who'd learned to be invisible. But every story, if you're brave enough, can end with being seen. Would you take a second chance at love after everything Priscilla and Alexander went through? Drop a red heart in the comments if you're rooting for them, and tell us, what's the bravest thing you've ever done for someone you love?